Listen to this, a dry, honking cough, almost like a goose, that shows up right after your dog lies down for the night or right before bed when nothing else seems wrong. If that sound is familiar, your dog's heart may already be working harder than it should to keep up, and there is a window here that is smaller than most owners think. Most people reach for cough syrup or just wait for a cold to pass. But this cough is not coming from the throat at all. It is coming from a heart that has quietly grown too big for the space around it. And here is the part almost every owner gets wrong with this exact cough. They wait to see if it gets worse. That single decision, waiting, is the one thing that makes this kind of cough more dangerous because of what is actually happening behind it. Every night it keeps showing up. If you felt a small flash of guilt just now, thinking about the nights you assumed it was a hairball or dry winter air, that is a completely normal reaction. This sound hides in plain sight. It sounds like 100 harmless things when you do not know the pattern behind it. A dog can still eat like normal, still play at the door, still wag like nothing is wrong. That is exactly why this gets dismissed for weeks. Noticing it at all, paying attention to a sound most people wave off, is already what a good owner does. That instinct is the whole reason you are still watching. Here is the belief that keeps this cough hidden for so long. Most people assume a cough in an older dog is just a cold, or allergies, or getting older, especially if the dog is still acting completely normal otherwise. It is an easy assumption because in people, a cough is almost always a respiratory infection, so that logic just carries over. But in dogs, especially small breeds and seniors, a cough can be mechanical instead of infectious. Not a virus, not a scratchy throat. A heart that has physically grown large enough to press on the windpipe running right beside it. And that changes everything about what waiting actually costs. So what is really going on in there? In a lot of small breed and older dogs, the valves inside the heart slowly wear down over the years and stop sealing tightly, something vets call mitral valve disease, which really just means a leaky valve. Picture a faucet washer that has worn thin. It does not seal anymore, so a little water keeps slipping backward every time you turn the handle. That is roughly what happens with blood in a leaking heart valve. Some of it slips backward instead of moving forward the way it should, so the heart chamber slowly stretches and enlarges to compensate, working harder to push the same amount of blood through the body. Here is the part that connects it back to that cough. That enlarged left side of the heart sits right beneath the windpipe in a dog's chest. As it grows, it starts to press against it, almost like a foot resting on a straw, not blocking it completely, just enough pressure to irritate it. And a dog's body answers that irritation the only way it can, with a cough. Usually dry at first, since there is only pressure here, not fluid yet. That is different from an infectious cough, which tends to come bundled with sneezing, discharge, a dog that just seems off overall. This one can show up in a dog who otherwise looks completely fine, which honestly is what makes it so easy to miss. There is another way to picture the whole thing. A heart with a leaking valve is a bit like an engine straining uphill, still running, still getting the job done, just working a lot harder than it should to cover the same ground. Over months and years, that extra effort is exactly what makes the chamber grow the way it does. This particular pattern shows up most in small and toy breed dogs as they move into their senior years, roughly 10 and up, which is worth knowing because it means this is not some rare freak occurrence. It is one of the most common heart conditions veterinarians see in dogs that size, at that age. So what does that actually sound like at home? And how do you tell it apart from a cold? The clearest one is the dry, honking cough itself. No mucus, no gagging like a hairball, and it tends to show up or get worse at night, or right after your dog lies down, not during play. A wet, productive cough tied to an actual cold looks and sounds different, softer, sometimes with discharge. Here is the part most owners get backward. An occasional cough right after excitement or gulping water too fast, that is normal. Nothing to lose sleep over. What stands out with this pattern is the opposite, a cough that shows up mainly at rest, when the dog is calm, lying still, not worked up at all. That reversal is the biggest clue. You might also notice restlessness at night, trouble settling into a comfortable position, pacing before finally lying down. That can be an early sign the chest simply feels different lying flat than it used to. And a slow drop in stamina on walks that used to be easy, needing more breaks, slowing down sooner, without heat or age fully explaining it. There is one more number that matters more than almost anything else here: how fast your dog breathes while fully asleep and calm. We will come back to exactly how to check that because it is the single most useful thing you can do tonight, and it is worth waiting for. One sign here is never a wait-and-see situation. If your dog faints or wobbles and goes briefly unsteady after excitement or a coughing fit, that is not something to monitor at home. That needs a same-day veterinary visit, full stop. If you have not caught your breath from that yet, you are not the only one. So before we go further, if this has helped you recognize something in your own dog, go ahead and drop a comment with where you are watching from tonight. Subscribing helps more owners catch this pattern before it becomes an emergency. And if you think this could help another dog owner you know, a like sends this to more of them. Now, back to what happens if this pattern gets ignored. Left alone, this does not stay the same. It tends to move in stages. It usually starts as that occasional night cough that seems minor enough to explain away. Over time, it can become more frequent, alongside a little less stamina than before. Further along, breathing can start to look labored even while resting, not just after activity. In more advanced stages, fluid can build up around the lungs, a condition called congestive heart failure, which is a much harder stage to manage than where we started tonight. Catching this at the cough stage instead of the labored breathing stage is what actually changes the outcome for a dog. Think of it like a dimmer switch being turned down slowly, night after night, so slowly that nobody in the house quite notices the room getting darker, until suddenly it is dim enough that everyone asks when that happened. Stamina fades the same way here, a little at a time, easy to blame on age until it is not just age anymore. That slow slide is also exactly why the resting breath count matters so much more than watching for the dramatic moment. Nobody wants to wait for the version of this where a sponge has already soaked up more than it can hold, which is roughly what advanced fluid buildup around the lungs looks like. The whole point of catching this early is never getting anywhere near that stage in the first place. Picture a small senior dog, around 10 years old, still greeting his family at the door every single day like nothing was wrong. For about 2 weeks, though, a dry cough only ever showed up after he curled up for the night. His family chalked it up to dry winter air and moved on. A veterinary exam picked up a heart murmur that had gone unnoticed, and an echocardiogram, an ultrasound picture of the heart, confirmed a leaking valve with early enlargement already underway. Caught at that point, with proper veterinary management, a lot of dogs like him go on to have a good quality of life for a long stretch. Not a guarantee, every dog is different, but a real, honest possibility when it is caught early instead of late. That is the difference between a cough that gets a bottle of syrup and a cough that gets an actual answer. Every dog is a little different too. A Cavalier or a Chihuahua built like that senior dog we just pictured is going to fit this pattern more often than a big barrel-chested breed. But size is a tendency here, not a rule that lets any dog off the hook. The cough and that resting count we are getting to matter no matter what is at the other end of the leash. And that is worth sitting with for a second, because a lot of what gets sold for coughs like this is not built with that difference in mind. Plenty of cough remedies and heart chews on pet store shelves promise heart support without ever mentioning that a cough like this needs a diagnostic image, not a guess off a supplement label. Supplements are not the enemy here. The issue is marketing them as if they replace the one tool that actually shows what is happening inside the chest, an echocardiogram. Your dog's veterinarian is never the target in any of this. The veterinarian is exactly where this pattern is supposed to end up. The target is the shelf built to make an owner feel like something has been handled, without ever actually confirming what it is. So what do you actually do at home, starting tonight? This is a heart pattern, not something a bowl of food fixes. So what follows is monitoring and support, not a cure. And that is worth saying plainly before anything else. Keep excitement and heat a little more moderate rather than cutting activity out entirely, since a sudden burst of excitement can trigger a coughing fit in a heart that is already working harder than it should. That applies whether your dog is a 5-pound lap dog or a 60-pound retriever, just scaled to what is normal for that dog. Weight matters more here than people expect, because extra weight means the heart has to work harder for the exact same result. If a diet change is on the table for a dog already showing this pattern, run it by the veterinarian first, since some cardiac diets and supplements can interact with heart medication in ways that are easy to miss on your own. Which brings us to why this matters, beyond just your own dog's cough. A sign like this rarely shows up completely on its own. It often travels with a few other pieces as part of a bigger pattern across a dog's whole day: energy, stamina, even how they settle at night. If you are not sure which piece to look at first for your own dog, we put together a free 2-minute quiz that helps map your dog's specific pattern and shows you exactly where to start. The link is sitting in the pinned comment, or you can scan the QR code on screen right now. Take it after this finishes, though, because the single most useful thing in this whole video is still coming. Keep a simple nightly log too, just cough, yes or no, and how the dog seemed otherwise: tired, normal, restless. On its own, one night tells you almost nothing. A pattern across a week tells a veterinarian something real. Here is the tool this entire video has been building toward. Once your dog is fully asleep and completely calm, count how many times their chest rises in 1 full minute. For almost any healthy dog at rest, that number should sit under 30 breaths per minute, regardless of whether they are small, medium, or large. One count means very little on its own. It can bounce around a bit night to night. That is normal. What matters is the trend. Do it again tomorrow night and the night after. A number that creeps up and stays up over several nights is the clearest signal there is that something is building, and it means a veterinary visit, not more waiting. If the number looks a little high one night but settles back down over the next few, that is usually just normal variation, warm room, restless dream, nothing to panic over. If it stays elevated for 3 or more nights in a row, or keeps climbing instead of settling, that is the pattern worth calling the veterinarian about, rather than waiting for the cough itself to get louder. A few things never belong anywhere near a dog managing something like this. No human cough suppressant, ever, without a veterinarian's direct guidance. Several contain ingredients that are unsafe for dogs and can quietly mask a worsening pattern. Xylitol, sometimes labeled birch sugar, shows up in sugar-free treats and some supplements, and it is highly toxic to dogs. Avoid it completely. Onion, garlic, grapes and raisins, chocolate, and cooked bones, which can splinter, stay off the list for any dog, always. And if you ever see pale or bluish gums, labored open-mouth breathing, or fainting, that is not a home monitoring situation anymore. That is a same-day emergency, no exceptions. To be fair, not every case looks textbook. A cough can ease up for a stretch and come back, or a resting count can look fine one week and creep up the next. So this is never something to self-diagnose off one good night. That uncertainty is exactly why the count and the log exist, to hand a veterinarian something real instead of a vague feeling that something seems off. One more thing worth saying honestly, this cough is not proof of anything by itself. Kennel cough and a collapsing trachea can both sound similar from across the room, and only a veterinarian with a stethoscope and imaging like an echocardiogram can actually tell them apart. What you are building here is not a diagnosis. It is the exact information that makes that appointment count. Do not try to change everything at once either. The collar, the exercise routine, the diet, all in the same week. Start with the nightly breath count first, since it costs nothing and tells you the most. Once that becomes routine, add the simple log. Diet and activity changes come last, and only with the veterinarian's input. A struggling heart rarely stays isolated from the rest of the body either. Poor circulation can affect kidney function over time, since kidneys depend on steady blood flow to work properly. Dental disease has also been linked to added strain on the heart, since bacteria in the mouth can reach the bloodstream. One more reason a veterinarian ends up looking at the whole dog, not just the cough that brought you in. That is also why weight and dental care tend to come up in the same breath as heart health during a checkup. They are not separate conversations. They all feed into how hard that heart has to work on an average Tuesday. A dog carrying a little extra weight, with teeth that have not been looked at in a while, is asking more of that same valve every single day, cough or no cough yet. Once a pattern like this has actually been checked and managed, the goal shifts to keeping it that way. Steady weight, consistent activity that is not overdone, and continuing that same nightly breath count as a simple ongoing check rather than a one-time test. A dog who has been stable for months can still drift again, so the count does not stop just because the cough did. A last honest note on all of this, and then the number. Not every dog responds the same way, even to good management, and a sign like a soft cough here or there can occasionally mean nothing at all. That is not a reason to skip the check. It is the reason the check exists, So a veterinarian, not a guess at home, gets the final word. So here is what tonight actually looks like. Once your dog is fully asleep, count the breaths for 1 minute. Drop that number in the comments, just the number, nothing else needed. It takes less effort than finishing this sentence, and it might be the most useful 60 seconds you spend with your dog all week. If this helped you catch something in your own dog, go ahead and subscribe, and that free 2-minute quiz is still sitting there in the pinned comment or the QR code on screen whenever you are ready for it. Whatever that number turns out to be tonight, go give your dog a little extra scratch behind the ears before bed. They have no idea any of this conversation happened. They just know you are still paying attention.